there should be one target, one simple target for the whole department. And all participants of this organization should be motivated by this target. In my case, it's actually incremental growth. Speaking about my experience in sales, I would say that I started to sell from my six or seven. And I still believe that it's really hard to teach person to sell. And this is a part of my sales organization management philosophy. Usually we're trying to get people that has already some sales capabilities organically from their birth. Then I started as a sales guy myself, mostly concentrated on international markets. My experience mostly related to enterprise sales, not my personal sales experience, not SMBs or middle market, and and only IT. So I started from a scratch selling in IT, and I'm continuing selling and managing sales in IT. So initially, as a sales guy, I was selling speech technologies from early from the start of this age. Then I moved to telecom. All professional, all big platforms for telecom operators, billing systems, SMS centers, and etc. with the long deals, with the long cycles, etc. And like when I was about 24 years old, I guess I started to manage sales, international sales in different companies. But I've spent almost, I guess, 10 years in telecom in different roles, but all of them were related to sales. And 5 years ago, as you already know, I started my career in SEMrush. When I started, it was like 8 people in my department doing sales. Right now, I'm covering all the markets except US and Canada. So we have different sales departments for those regions. This is really funny when you have like 8 languages in your department from Sydney to Sao Paulo. And finally in SEMrush we got to IPO within 5 years. And I think I'm sure that a big part of this success is what sales did in SEMrush. So this is my role. This is my history.
Fantastic. That's a great story. Out of interest, you said you moved into kind of a management roles at the age of 24. How do you find, or how did you find that transition into more of a leadership role compared to being a rep, let's say?
The fact is that my education is international management. So originally, I didn't see myself just as a rep, which is actually quite normal, because in my team I have like perfect reps, very effective reps, but they don't want to be a managers because it's completely different role. It's completely different responsibility, because sales reps is more likely an entrepreneur who works for himself. He has his own quota and he enjoys that. And that drives him, he enjoys that, and he just likes selling more and more. I always understood that I will not be a sales rep till the end of my career. This is not much. I like managing people. I like building processes in sales, but as if I was quite a good sales rep myself. I know this fear. I know how to motivate people. I know how onboard people, educate people. That's why this is more interesting for me, especially when you like take something small and grow it to something big.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because kind of the way I view it is, you can have really, really, really good reps, but they don't always make good leaders or managers. They don't always translate in that sense. They're both quite separate. Like I think kind of a managerial mindset, it's a different type of thing to just being a rep, I guess.
It's absolutely different. Like I have some hints how I choose team leads for my team. For example, there's two ways to choose: whether you get some internally or whether you get someone outside of the company. And both ways are good, because when you take someone outside, they bring some experience, they bring some new ideas, and they can look at your processes like independently and say, hey guys, maybe we should change here something and generate more incremental revenue on that. And also this is good to take someone from inside, because they're already ready. But you have to choose person with management capabilities.
For sure, yeah, I totally agree. And if we go on to kind of on that then, what are some of the fundamental ways of driving communication in all revenue teams?
First of all, I need to mention that the revenue organizations are changing every year, and what we had like 15 years ago when there were just like sales department with sales reps, maybe some SDRs, and it's completely different right now, because in my organization I have pre-sales engineers, I have SDRs, I have renewals, especially if we are talking about SaaS organization, and we have junior sales reps and enterprise sales reps, and etc. So the critical point for me is actually what people I'm bringing to my organization. I think as any sales leader on the market has his own like management philosophy, because I still think that sales is a very creative job. Nobody likes in the word sales guys. The majority of the population of this planet hates them, because they're calling you, they're trying to push something. I'm trying to change this stereotype. I think that sales job can be creative, and in any case, it's paid much more than any other positions in any organizations. But what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get on board people that are aligned with my philosophy. So, and that means that all of them will align with my philosophy, and there won't be any, mental conflicts between people in part of my team and between different teams in my organization. The second point, and it should be very simple, there should be one simple target for the whole department, and all people and all participants of this organization should be motivated by this target. In my case, it's actually incremental growth. So I'm trying to be more creative. I don't like scripts. I want people to be creative, to invent something, how to approach person, how to make him talk to you. But definitely every person in my team has one unique and the only motivation, which is incremental growth, and everybody are working on one target. So if the organization reach this target, everybody will be like compensated, get bonuses, etc.
Yeah, super important. So on that then, what are some of the kind of creative ways that your team or you have implemented in terms of outreach or getting people to talk to you, etc.
This is a really, really tricky question, because like I have the whole world in my department, and 8 languages, as I mentioned.
Yes, of course,
and actually, the first thing, you have to find a special approach for every region. There are some mistakes when, like, for example, I have team working for Latin America, and usually people say that people treat this region as as one region, but it's actually like a lot of different countries with different approach that we need. I know, for example, in Germany, people don't like talking. They like reading, they like information, they like figures. In Latin America, I know in Mexico and Colombia, people like talking. In Brazil, people just adore talking, and you won't sell anything if you don't like to talk. You have to be ready for that. And that's why I need to find a proper person for this kind of region. with all the specialities this region have. The second one, I like experiments. I don't like when people like are staying on some, I know, some script, on some email, title of email, and want to get maximum out of that. I'm always motivating people to try different approaches to measure how this approach went well or not so well, depending on what is popular, what is on hype in this certain region, just to engage the person you are trying to sell to, just not to be just someone who is just pushing, sending emails, but to be someone that can bring something interesting, can bring up discussion, and people might spend good time with talking to my sales reps.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point you make there about having approaches. Like organizations now are worldwide, right? So I looked at your company and you have places, like you say, in Brazil, in Russia, America, Europe, and having different approaches to different cultures. So kind of how do you find how much kind of effort needs to go into kind of creating different approaches for each place, and kind of how do you find leaders in those areas that you kind of go, right, you'd be a good leader for this area, and so on?
There's one point which is unique for everyone. They have to know languages. The good thing is to get native speakers, but not always you can get native speakers to open offices everywhere. You are not able to open offices in each country all over the world. But the language is important. The second one, you have to know culture. Usually we take people that spend some time living in exact country. For example, if we're looking for someone to sell in Brazil, we usually have people that lived in Brazil for 3, 4, 5 years, so they actually understand the culture, and it's really critical. For example, like I'm originally Russian, but I don't know how to sell in Russian because I've never. Yeah.
Sorry, it cut out then. Sorry.
It's interesting. I said I stopped telling that it's critical to have someone who was living in this exact country or in exact region to understand, and then goes experiments. Then you, depending on what you're offering, or what segment of client, because it's also, whether we are talking about enterprises, SMB, it's different. But still, there's some unique rules, some mentality rules, I would say, cultural rules, and it works. If you sometimes sales reps have to play like an actors.
Yes.
Yeah, this is very important. And the other point, which is also really important, like you might have all the soft sales skills, you might have all the hard skills, you might have like experience in sales, but I don't know whether it's correct to say or not, but people need to like you. This is important. For sometimes, like, you can talk a lot, you can know the project and all the arguments and show the value, but if people, and it doesn't depend from what you were studied for, onboarded for, etc. But this is like something that comes organically, and it's different for different regions, because for Brazilians you will be smiling and dancing carnival, etc. For Germans you will be like calm, etc.
That's a super important point there. Just moving on to metrics now. What metrics do you really focus on at your core as a revenue function?
There are standard metrics. I think everybody telling you about that. It's like the first thing is, which is the most important for me, is an incremental growth.
Okay.
Because we have to grow. We have to grow step by step, month by month, quarter by quarter, year by year. Then, as a SaaS company, of course, we look at the parts of this growth, whether it's a new growth or whether it's expansion, upgrades. And we pay a lot of attention, of course, to churn. We are doing a lot of stuff. We involving our people into the product. Sometimes churn happens just because people didn't manage to get into the product and didn't manage to start using the product. It's one like 50-60% of churn. This is a standard. Of course, I'm looking at headcount, as I mentioned. This is really important for me to, as if we are working not only with outbound, but we work a lot of, as the majority of such platforms as SEMrush, with inbound traffic. We are monitoring how our traffic is growing, whether we have enough people for that or another region, comparing regions with regions. And this is also a really tricky thing, because you can't compare like financially and mathematically UK, for example, and I know France, because it's completely different. But all the standard metrics right now, with all this pandemic, all the stuff, and people are mostly working remotely. I have a problem, I would say an issue with all the socialization, etc. Nevertheless, the majority of my sales reps, as I told, like private entrepreneurs, they're working for themselves, for their small businesses, SEMrush, but people still lacking all this communication, like live bodies around them. So we are working on that also. We are like creating some events, maybe some breakfasts. It's a tricky thing, because people miss this socialization, but from the other part, they don't want to return to office for 5 days per week. Nobody wants.
It's completely changed. I think it's crazy, you know. It's I've only started in a world where it's been remote working, as they say. So I didn't know any different. But yeah, I mean, before COVID, it was 5 days a week all the time. So it's crazy how much it's changed. On that, then, kind of the metrics that you look at, are you getting those out of your CRM, like a Salesforce, or I'm not quite sure what you use, if you use Salesforce, or do you get those out and then put them into reporting, into spreadsheets, and then have the ability then to show everybody in the revenue team? Or how do you do that to go back to our last question in terms of aligning the revenue teams with that reporting?
Actually, from the point of information in my team, I'm quite open. I'm trying to show all the metrics I can. I'm starting from individual progress of certain rep, and everybody, all the other guys see what is the progress of that or another rep, which is really good and motivating. You know, there are two. I'll move a little bit aside. There are two types of good reps. The first type is the rep who wants to reach his quotas and who wants to earn a lot of money. But the better one is the second type, is the rep who wants to be the first, who wants to be the better than all the other guys. And sometimes he doesn't care about money. He just wants to be the first. That's why, to be transparent here, I'm actually sharing all the information in different ways. It might be CRM system. Of course, we are working CRM, and all the information is stored here, and all the team quite good in creating reports and understanding the figures. And ending with some Excel sheet where you send them in Slack and say, "Hey guys, see how you are doing," or in general in sales, or we have some product targets. For example, we have different add-ons and products, so we have some targets and stimulating sales of such cases. So actually, answering your question, I'm quite open. I'm trying to show as much figures as possible to my team in different interfaces, mostly in CRM, but some in Excel, in Tableau, I know, in different kind of interface. Right now, there's a lot of analytical tools you can show the figures.
Interesting. So when you're sitting down with your reps, then, I mean, it's a very noisy world, metrics, especially when it comes to sitting down with reps and rep one-to-ones. What metrics do you highlight as, okay, these are the ones I'm going to decide whether you're doing your job well or you're not doing your job well?
Mm-hmm. my philosophy might be incorrect, but I will tell you my philosophy. I don't care what they do.
Okay.
The main thing is they need to reach their targets. And my job is to adjust targets, increase, decrease, or change them in the way that it will be close like to the real world. And actually, all the new sales reps are coming. I'm saying, I don't care. You can work 1 hour per week, or you can work like 60, 100 hours per week. If you reach your targets, I don't care. And it's not true for 100%. Of course, we are monitoring different kind of metrics, how they process leads, how calls, and etc. But I don't want to press sales reps with all this micromanagement. I don't think that micromanagement is effective. And actually, people like that, and people usually show result, because when I give them freedom, they have more freedom, and freedom gives them creativity. And of course, we have team leads, and we are trying to suggest some best practices, because I have like in my team, I have a person that oversees all the processes and helps me with improving those processes. But if person is reaching or overreaching his targets, I will not push him and press him with some best practices that might work. I think if he reaches the target, he's doing well.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the only thing that matters, you're paid on the fact that you meet your target. And I think there's like a change that's happened, especially in the sales world, where it's more about output, not necessarily input. If you can get the same results by putting in less input and having time where you can kind of relax and then charge your batteries, that's better, because ultimately you only need to hit your target or better your target. And if you can do that in any which way, it's great, right?
Yeah, because you have, like, everybody understands who's somehow involved in revenue departments. Sometimes it's quite a routine job.
Yeah.
And still, like, people can't just earn money all the time. They need to feel that they can influence on something, that they're not just following some instructions, getting money. They need to understand and have this feeling that they're independent. They decide what to do, and usually that brings positive impact on targets, on revenue targets.